Welcome. I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher from our BizVision studio in the UK. You're watching the Conscious Business Show on the BVTV network. The old saying is that money's the root of all evil. Well, that may be when it is used to disadvantage people, but money can also be a power for good. Today, there's a new breed of investors who want to invest with a social conscience. And here on the BVTV Conscious Business Show, we say that's exciting news. But where are these investors? What's their thinking? How do you attract them to invest in your own business? Well, who better to ask than the capital advisor to angel investors and networks and host of the podcast Compassionate Capitalist. Let's meet Karen Rands. Hello, Karen.
Hello, Malcolm. So excited to be on BVTV today.
And lovely to see you. And you're, of course, in Atlanta, Georgia, straight across the pond from us. Karen,
yes.
What is compassionate capitalism in respect of our conscious business agenda?
Well, okay, so how I define compassionate capitalism, and it has a history of how I came upon this, but originally the definition was when people invest time, knowledge, resources, money into entrepreneur endeavors to bring innovation to the market, create jobs, and create wealth for all those involved. It's sort of an economic statement. And then it evolved over time after I came out with my book to be where people are investing in the passion of an entrepreneur because they relate to that passion. And they're not just, capitalism is the buying and selling of things, but it's deciding to put their money to work so that they can help the compassion, the company, the passion, right? To be able to this innovation that's going to benefit the world, but also uplift our economies. And so it's just a different way to use your money to have a greater impact than just buying and selling stocks or buying and selling real estate.
Okay. So is it all growing then, this capitalism growing? And if so, why?
Well, you have to go into sort of the reason why I came up with this idea. And if I may, I started out when I left the corporate world and discovered this world of angel investing and was invited to be the protege of a gentleman that had started this angel investor group. And as I started to meet these angel investors, because it was new to me, I didn't realize people invested their own money into private things. It made sense that there was a gap between when somebody starts up and we're in a bank or a VC, but I only heard of venture capital when I was in the corporate world. And I realized that all of those people that were investing their own money directly into these entrepreneurs had a certain compassion about it. They liked what they were doing. There was an excitement about the impact that they were having by helping these companies. And they were just doing, it was just a piece of their portfolio. They invested in a lot of things. And so I had understood that, and I had always believed that it was a way for you to, grow our economy is through entrepreneurism. And so when the recession hit in the United States and ultimately around the world in the 2008, 9, 10 timeframe, because of the real estate, my angel group had been extremely active up until that point. We had made many investments. We had been ranked nationally in the United States. And then all of a sudden it kind of came to a screeching halt. And I said, what I have to do, I knew these people still had money. It was just sitting on the sidelines. And what can I do to get them to put that money to work so we could turn this economy around? So I started calling it the Compassionate Capitalist. And I renamed my podcast into the Compassionate Capitalist podcast show to try to encourage people to put their money to work, having a direct impact either in their local economy or on a broader economy if they were going to invest in a company that might be, big, really big one day. And then when the Jobs Act came out, sort of in response to that, there was two elements. Mostly people talked about it because it gave greater access to entrepreneurs to get to capital and not have to go through these very, structured and limited focused angel groups to a broader audience of people that might relate to what they're doing and understand what they're doing, because it may not be just tech. It may be something else. It may be something that they directly have a passion for. And they could get access to that capital. But on the flip side, so many people had lost their retirements because of the collapse of real estate or the collapse of the stock market. And it takes a long time for the stock market to recover. And, they could now have a piece of the puzzle of these entrepreneurs that were growing really big, there was so much innovation that had come to market. You think about it, drones, 3D printers, smartwatches, all of those innovations came to market because people were giving money for product in advance of that product being available. They weren't getting any equity or investing in the company. They were just getting something in return for their money. And when those companies became really big and became, something that everybody had, all those people that had put millions of dollars into them didn't benefit from that at all. So what we had is this opportunity for all these people that had not benefited from the growth of those companies to be able to now participate in anything they wanted, whether they had $1,000 or $100,000. And so the growth and the success, because to me, the greatest source of wealth is a successful entrepreneur, right? The next greatest source of wealth creation are those investors that have an opportunity to invest in those entrepreneurs. They don't have to have all the risk. They can share in the risk with many others to help the passion, going back to the beginning, of what that entrepreneur is working on, because they're going to work harder and longer than any investor has to in order to make that company be successful. And now with this idea of compassionate capitalism, people can choose to learn how to invest in entrepreneurs the same way they choose to learn how to invest in the stock market or the real estate market. And really, that was the purpose of the book, was to really establish the framework and the foundation and the fundamentals of how you can get started investing in entrepreneurs as a compassionate capitalist.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Now, just before we move on to the next question, Karen, I just want to remind people not only about the URL to you behind there, but remember it's the .co, which is the new suffix and thing. So there's not a mistake on there. It's KarenRance.co. Okay.
Thank you.
Entrepreneurism is about creating wealth, but it needs a balance, between planet, people, and profits to be truly conscious. In these troublesome times, it's only natural to go for the profit, or can people still have that compassionate resolve?
Oh, sure. Absolutely, Malcolm. So here's the thing. When you are somebody, so let me explain kind of in my world, the difference in a conscious capitalism and compassionate capitalism, because they really can be parallel to each other with the same goals. It really depends on how the compassionate capitalist chooses to put their money to work. So a conscious business is when the business itself, the corporate culture, the CEOs of those businesses decide that they are going to how they treat their employees, how they interact with their customers, the kinds of products that they bring to market, the benefit that they bring to the market, how they work with their vendors, who they choose to be their vendors. All of that is around this idea that those same vendors are going to treat their employees right. They're going to do, living wages, all of those things, right? Whereas on the compassionate capitalist side, it's sort of the outside looking in. So you get to choose your money to say, I'm going to invest in that kind of business because I believe in what that entrepreneurs and this founding team and the corporate culture, not only is that the product does those things, the way they're going to conduct business is going to be with this conscious effort to do better, to be better, to have a greater impact in a positive way in the way that everything that they do, in the way that they do their business. And so we, on the folks that choose to put our money into those businesses, that, we are making we're not just doing another mobile app that's a game. That's all. There's an entertainment factor to that, but we're putting it to work so that it will have things that and impact things that we're passionate about, whether it might be the environment, it might be food sources, it might be technology that improves efficiency. Now we have this all these trends as a result of the pandemic to be able to affect how people do work-life balance. Right. So there's all kinds of things that you can have a hobby in or have a special knowledge in, that you can find a business that is having a conscious impact in the community in the way that they do business, and put your money to work in that as a compassionate capitalist.
I noticed, by the way, that one of your old companies, IBM, is really sort of getting into strongly in the UK, perhaps in the USA, with "Tech is good" is their strapline at the moment. So what type of investors are turning to compassionate ideals? Is it the young investor, the institute, the established investor? Who has it in their key criteria now for investing?
Well, so here's the thing. Because angel investing, at least within the United States, and I think it's probably fairly consistent in other parts of the world, at least ones that have been active for a long time. I mean, you think about when the original explorations were done to discover the new world. Those were kind of angel investors, the royalty, the money that they backed these explorers to go find, these treasures, right? And so it's been around for a while, the concept of doing that. But because of the way the rules were created, at least within the United States, in the regulatory environment, it became a very exclusive kind of group of people. And because of the rules that were put in place in the United States, at least, the people that you would think would be advising folks with wealth that they could have this avenue to invest in, your wealth managers and financial planners, they really were discouraged to talk about it. So it was always sort of very, very, exclusive in the way. And also primarily for many, many, many decades, a white male oriented world, if you will. And so what has happened is that there's been this breakthrough as a result, again, of the Jobs Act. And so when I realized, because the way my angel group kind of petered out like it did, it was because most of the people that were in my angel investor group were people that had day jobs. They ran their own companies, or they were execs in companies. They had not had an exit like out of a tech company, and all of a sudden they're extremely wealthy and now they become an angel investor. They were people that were having to work on their own businesses to keep them going. And I realized when I did the research in the United States, there's between, depending on which list you look at, 5 million to 8 million people that qualify as an angel investor with $400,000 a year or more in income. So it's easy to qualify at that level of income on a W-2, meaning on their statement, their check statements, right? And so there is wealth out there, but less than 5% of them, really only like 3%, participated in any kind of angel investor deal. So there was a huge marketplace for people if you could just get them to understand that they had the potential to invest in these companies before they went public or before they got acquired. I mean, I had all kinds of people that would say to me, well, if I had only known about Home Depot before they became Home Depot, whatever. Well, they just needed to know how to do that. There was no education. So I had an opportunity to participate in a summer series of education through Rework. And the people that attended that, because I was talking about the difference between angel investing to ICOs, digital coins, or cryptocurrency, and stock market and real estate, and comparing it as an investment strategy for wealth creation. Everybody that came to my class were millennials. They weren't making $400,000 a year. They were making $150,000. But because they had grown up in this crowdfunding world, they were well aware of the potential to create wealth by investing. And they worked for tech companies or something by investing in these at smaller amounts. They could do $200 every month in another crowdfunding company and create a portfolio of companies that would rival any robust, big investor or even venture capital, because just the odds of success in there would mean they would have more money through that strategy than they would in their 401k if they had put $200 in a month and, over 5 years. Right. And and it was an aha moment for me that says I was targeted on this other group, but here's this whole other segment that understands the potential of creating wealth through investing in entrepreneurism. And I just really needed to get my information out to them. And that's one of the reasons why I ramped up my podcast, because they're also a strong listener to podcasts, particularly business podcasts.
Mm. Now, look, you're an experienced advisor to investors, and you must have seen all types of pitches by those needing funding. What makes for a good pitch to a compassionate investor?
Well, it's probably the same for even a non-compassionate
Yeah.
investor, right? The main thing that an investor wants to know is do you really understand who your customer is, and in whatever it is that you're doing, is there a need, a true want in the marketplace for what it is that you have, so that they're willing to change their behavior, their where they buy now, or what they buy now, or how they do it now, because it might be an innovation that is a whole new way of doing things. When I first started with IBM, not to age myself too much, but we were coming out with PCs. And so what we had to do was actually sell against our own typewriters as a new way of doing things, right? And so there's a new way, and so there's an educate, whatever it is, that there's a fundamental benefit in the marketplace for that product that people will want to buy, and you understand it. You have done your authentic customer identification, and that piece of it is number one. Number two, that it's that you know how you're going to make money at it, because at some point you've got to make money. The old world of how many eyeballs on your website and that kind of stuff is not really there anymore. It doesn't really exist. And so, and even when we get to this idea of unicorns, they've learned that just throwing money in a deal, if they don't know how to actually make money, there's ultimately it's going to collapse. And so those are really the real things that the investors do. You have to come to the table being able to explain that, and then they feel authentic with the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur knows that there's things that they don't know. They're willing to get advice from people that know more than what they know. They just have this vision for where they want to go, and they're willing to navigate, pivot, all those other things to get to this vision. And it is about being a rich founder and not just a poor CEO because they're stubborn, or it's my way or the highway, or anything like that. So it's an attitude thing that's in there, but it's really about what is the impact and the benefit of that product in the marketplace. And the good news within the United States as well is that they now have this thing where they're calling them benefit corporations. So those companies that had been you called it the double bottom line, they weren't really they were intending to make money, but they weren't going to make as much money. And you had to sort of justify why you would invest in that, because there was this other bottom line. There's this other stuff that now it's kind of fallen into sustainable and conscious and all these other kind of categories of business. But now it's actually factored into the capital gains structure, the tax structure, all of those things that make it worthwhile for those companies, because nonprofits can't take equity capital, right? They only take donations, but they can have a for-profit business that is a benefit corp. They're not expected to make as much profit, but they can have a for-profit and can have investors. And so investors that really have a passion for certain things that, I've seen all kinds of really exciting stuff that benefit underserved communities in ways for clean water, or access to power, or access to education, and things that they may not have, or good housing, good affordable housing, workforce housing, things like that you can put in there. And they may not have this outrageous profit that you would expect on a traditional private equity angel investment, but you can still benefit from that as an investor and have some special tax incentives for investing in those companies as well.
Brilliant. Just before we move and have a general chat, behind me on the screen, everybody, you can see not only the URL to Karen's, but an image of a book. So let's just chat to her about the book. What caused the spark for you to write it?
So the original version of the book was called How to Be an Angel Investor. And then because sometimes it was Learn to Be an Angel Investor, we decided, in marketing, learn was people don't want to learn stuff. They just want to know how to do things. So we had modified it. And when I was rebuilding the Angel Investor Group, a wealth manager had come to me and said, you know what, I've got clients that want to be angel investors, but I'm not allowed to tell them because of these regulatory environments and the policies of the firm that I work for. And so unless I'm actually involved in that deal, and most angel deals are smaller than what a traditional broker dealer would take on. So the cost, it's out of sync there. It's out of balance. And so he says, is there any kind of training out there, any kind of information that I can steer them to so they can learn how to be an angel investor? And I looked around and there really wasn't. There's lots for entrepreneurs. There wasn't really anything else. So back then, ebooks were what you gave people in a PDF file in exchange for their email, right? There wasn't such a thing as selling ebooks. There weren't Kindles or any of those kind of things. And so I wrote, which was the first 5 chapters of what at the time I intended to be 9 chapters with a tool. And everything got really business. And I used it to attract investors into our group. And we had, a local group, but also a national presence as a result of providing this information. So fast forward to what I spoke about earlier with the collapse of the market and the recession, and then the Jobs Act. And I looked around and I said, oh man, this Jobs Act is really going to change the world. And it's going to be the greatest democratization of the capital markets. Big words, but those were words we were using. And a shift in capital from these other places in a portfolio into entrepreneurism. But guess what? There still was no real training. Kauffman Foundation that provides a lot of support to angel investor networks had some training that they would do for organizations that were part of the Angel Capital Association, but there really wasn't. And there were some people doing some videos and things like that, but there wasn't really anything structured. There wasn't a manual, so to speak. So I went to my ebooks, I dusted them off. I had to go through and update all of the references and all the data points because they were a decade old. I had to do, and bring in crowdfunding into it. So I hired a group to help me, clean it up and get it together and get it into the marketplace. And it was a real labor of love because I really wanted it to do the right thing for the marketplace, because I really wanted the Jobs Act and this ability for entrepreneurs to get access to capital and people to be able to share in that success. I really wanted it to be, a profound impact in the marketplace. And so it's a primer. It basically takes people through the steps. There's a glossary because it's new language that people may not use. There's a resource portal that when they buy the book, they get a code in there. They get some access to this portal that has worksheets for figuring out the valuation. It has sample term sheets. It has due diligence checklists. It's got questions to ask entrepreneurs when you're doing a follow-up session. All kinds of tools are in there, and each chapter has steps to what to do next and things like that. So it's really intended to be a primer for that person that wants to figure out, should I be an angel investor? Should I be a compassionate capitalist? What does that look like? This is how much money I have. How do I participate if I have this much versus this much? All of those things are covered in the book. So it's really just a primer for that.
I like what you've done there, because it's almost like a living book. You can go to the portal and keep the portal fresh. So the book is always continuously of value. It doesn't go out of date. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And people can go and buy the book and get access by going to KarenRands.co, can they?
Yes, absolutely. On my, so it's available on Amazon. You can buy it in England off of Amazon. I have people that have bought it all over the world, and it's only $20. And so it's like, the value is significantly more than that. I wanted to get the information out there in the marketplace. And they can go to my website, and under resources, when they click on resources, there's a place they can get an excerpt. There's 40. So the inside secrets, there's 47 inside secrets. So these are little tips and comments and thoughts that I add in there as I'm going through a section that says, here's a kind of like a tip that I'm not covering in detail. It's sort of like a summary of something or a piece of information in there. And so there's an excerpt of 12 of those that I think are sort of the top ones that people can download and look at. things like that as well.
Okay, that's brilliant. Let's just talk about your podcast now, because one podcast person to another. How often? How long's it been going? What do you talk about? Where do you find it?
So the Compassionate Capitalist podcast is goes. A new show is released every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And we now, as I have started doing video, so there's a companion video similar to what you do here, and that really started this year. There's a few other ones that I've done over the years in the past, but it was started over a decade ago. Again, podcasts back then were sort of for SEO backlinks that we used to draw people into our website. So when I rebooted it, if you will, to amplify the message, I realized that this idea of compassionate capitalism and angel investing is complex. It's not something that's in 140 characters or a little ad for Facebook or something like that. And I really needed to provide the deeper content for those people that are wanting to grow a successful entrepreneur business, but also the people that are investing in that. And so we meet the meeting of the point of, wealth creation through this. And so I interview angel investors. I interview some entrepreneurs that have done conscious business, that are in the conscious business, some really interesting stories of things that entrepreneurs that have come back to rebuild their community or do a certain kind of business that had that double purpose in there and why they started their business, things like that. Different sectors, esports or bio angels investing in biomed products, things like just sometimes how to use different tools to be better and mitigate your risk in angel investing, how to use your self-directed IRA to be in angel investing. And I do because the legalization of cannabis is having a profound impact. And I sort of see that as a whole new industry that's being created. So there's segments that are called cannabis capitalism that talks about, all of the business opportunities or the risks associated with those. So there's just a broad assortment of topics. And there's probably over, there's 180 plus episodes out there now. That date back. I've purged a lot of the old ones, but some that are timeless are still in there. How to build a board, things like that. And it's available on all of your platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Google Podcast. It's available. The videos are on YouTube under my name, Karen Rands. Everything's got Karen Rands on it. So
we're just similar. We're just spreading our message around the world, Karen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, I'm really entranced by your passion and your knowledge. So let's move, though, unfortunately, to the last question. I like to give all my guests 3 wishes. Sort of like a Disney thing, If I were to give you 3 wishes for the future of conscious capitalism, what would those 3 wishes be?
Well, for conscious capitalism, I really wish that businesses, we've seen this, really a spotlight on it as a result of the pandemic. Even prior to the pandemic, if you watched any of the things going on in our congressional hearings, where we have, the delta that you see between the income of the C-level, the chief, this, that, and the other of at your executive level to the person that's, working with the customers or doing the basic work that generates the revenue of the company, that to shorten that, you know what I mean? That we would, as business owners, recognize the value of good healthcare, good income, so that people can pay for good childcare, that we uplift those within the working class of our communities so that they can be more engaged in the economy, in what they choose and have access to spend their money on, where they choose to live, where they have flexibility and choices. So that's the first thing that I would really want within these organizations, that whether you're being pressured by your peers or pressured by outside influences, that you step up and you do that. And then the second part, well, along with that, so that's the people factor. But we've had, regulations come and go when it comes to what we do with our environment. And we have seen within the last few years in the United States a step back on regulations that potentially they were helping our environment. They were helping to make sure we were on a path to cleaner air, that we were on a path to provide clean water, right? And all of these things that we have an ability to have an impact. And, people want to say we have free markets. Well, and we're in, capitalism, this, we need to have less regulations. Well, okay, fine. Then step up and be responsible. Let science dictate the way you do things and the way you choose and it goes back to what I talked at the beginning, the vendors that you choose to do with, what do they do? Do they, and yes, there is a cheaper workforce sometimes overseas and other areas that you may need to do, but don't just do that for that purpose. Make sure that you're doing stuff across the board to help your own communities, that piece of it. And even if you dedicate, one of the things that corporations can do, that we see this in big companies do, UPS does it, Coca-Cola does it, where they take a piece of their corporate profits and they invest it back into businesses in their communities that are in their bailiwick, in their industry. They've got an innovation in their industry, and they co-invest with the angel investors, but it's hard to raise capital. So take a portion of the profits that you make as big corporations and make a conscious effort to invest it into businesses that are bringing innovation. And one of the things that's happening of late as a result, really, the awareness that came out of the Black Lives Matter marches all over the world, right? The systemic racism that we were really not truly aware of. We've seen the outcome of it. Now we can look back and we can see it, but we didn't realize it was going on as much as it was during all this period of time. And so I did a series of podcasts addressing this, and I had a call to action in that says, businesses out there, if you're a business that's not a big public company, maybe you're just a business that's making 10, 20, $30 million a year as a growing business. Will take a portion of that, and venture capital funds and even angel investors, and I've seen this happening with angel investor groups, and make a proactive, conscious effort to go find women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses that are doing things. Your criteria stays the same. Your reasons to invest and why you invest in this company and that company stay the same, but just get your pool of options of who you look at for investment, grow that pool so it includes minority and women-owned businesses, and take a piece of your corporate profits to put into those businesses. If you're an angel investor or a fund, your family office, take a piece of your investment strategy and add it to investing in these entrepreneurs that are in these sectors, in these areas that, work within all the other rules of how you make your investments, but strive to find those types of opportunities that you can consider. And we've seen it now. Google has put a bunch of money towards investing in, and I think Atlanta got 25 million. That's for women-owned business things. The Fifth Third Bank is very active in trying to provide zero interest or co-invest in some of these opportunities, give them very low interest that goes along with their investments that go along with that. There's just, there's a lot that's happening because when they became aware of it, they said, okay, we're going to work within our corporate charter to put our money to work in these ways that will benefit everybody. Because like the whole saying, all boats rise when the tide rises, and if we can use our money to help the tide rise. So for economic opportunity within communities and within sectors, demographics of our world, then, everybody benefits from that.
Brilliant. You were so inspirational. Now, remember, Karen, at this moment, we are still recording, so we're live, yeah? Can we come back again and talk even further?
Oh, absolutely. I would love to talk more about this. I love talking about, this and trying to spur people to be more conscious in the way that they make their investments and become part of the compassionate capitalist movement. Yeah. So absolutely,
well,
Malcolm.
I've got that. I've got you on record now. You're committed. Karen Rands, thank you so much for a truly inspirational and fascinating interview.
Well, thank you, Malcolm, and onwards and upwards.